call the meeting to order. We're all present. Do we have someone to give the invocation? If not, we'll ask Lewis to do his last invocation. I'm going to ask Drew to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Thank you, Lord, for this commission here and the jobs we do. Thank you for helping us, Lord, and making decisions. And Lord, thank you for Enid we live in. It's a very nice city, has a lot of progress going on at this time. And Lord, just help us with this work and help the city to grow. And Lord, be with America, and God bless America. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Lewis. Thank you, Drew. You've done a good job for the city of Enid. I will miss you.
Miss you too.
Item number 4, consider approval of minutes of the regular session of April 16, 2013.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion by Drew, second by Lewis. Any discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 5, awards, presentations, and organizational business. Item 5.1, present the pet available for adoption at the city animal shelter.
Oh, it's cute.
Hang on tight.
Good evening. My name is Officer Jared Free with Enid Animal Control, and who I have with me is Duke. Duke is about a 3 or 4 year old Boston Terrier, and he's actually comes up due for adoption on the 9th. But we do have a lot of dogs that are coming up for adoption. So, I mean, if y'all are interested in a dog, or y'all have anybody interested in getting a dog, maybe a cat. Sometimes we get ferrets. Definitely have somebody come in and take a look, because these animals do need homes. We've been doing pretty good with adoption rates lately, so we try to keep adopting out. And Duke should be available on the 9th if anybody's available. If not, just try to get somebody to come and get Duke, because he's a really good dog. I've only spent about 30 minutes with him, and he's already minding as much as he wants to, and he's doing very well at it. So y'all have a great day. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Item 5.2, recognition of outgoing commissioners by the city manager. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I invite 2 of our city commissioners to join me this evening, and I'd like first, Commissioner Blackburn, if you would come and stand in front of that microphone. Mr. Blackburn, you have served this community in a number of responsible roles. You've retired 3 times before taking on the role as a city commissioner. 4 times. Just like I said, 4 times. And I hope that when I am 10 years younger than you, I will have 1/2 the vitality and spirit and contributions. So we know well of your volunteer contributions at the hospital and a range of other acumens here in the community. We know well of your deep spiritual beliefs. That has been evidenced on multiple occasions by your conviction and submission of your thoughts at pending council decisions. You've had a 4-year term of some very challenging yet courageous responses and commission actions. And on behalf of the staff, I'd like to invite Mike Goodpasture to join me and represent the employees of the city of Enid. I'd like to present you, Mike, if you would, your award designation ID banners.
Thank you very much.
And one more, Mike. Commissioner Blackburn's picture that has graced our halls for the past 4 years.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Blackburn, a simple piece of walnut, one of the hardiest, most beautiful of woods that reflects your contribution to this community. I hope that you hang it with pride and remember that we all appreciate, we admire, and we offer thanks for your service.
That I will. Thank you very much for all this, Eric, and thank the city employees for all their hard work, and all the commissioners I served with, and the new ones coming in. I enjoyed every one of them. And we didn't always agree, but we always come to a decision. And that's what's important. And I enjoyed the 4 years almost all the time. And I'm glad I'm not working the budget this year.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Ritchie, if I could invite you to come and stand before the same microphone. Commissioner Ritchie, on behalf of the employees of the city of Enid, your placard for your 4 years of service to the community. And we know that you came in earlier and fat-fingered your picture on. So what remains is this plaque on behalf of the employees of in the community of Enid. We honor and respect and admire and offer reflection on your contributions to the community. You were one of the 3 stalwarts who headed a very, very challenging era in our community in designing Enid as a destination. It was your leadership that provided the strength for your contemporaries to follow you in making a very difficult decision that now everybody in the community and the nation is laying claim to. But we all know who were there, that it was your leadership that provided this new dimension of quality of life in Enid. We all know that it was your dedicated efforts. I remember when you took office 4 years ago, you said and you promised and you have delivered that you would conduct yourself as if you had one term to serve, and it was a matter of ethics that would guide your decisions. We all appreciate that, Drew, and thank you for your service.
Thank you. You know, I've thought a lot about what I would say up here, and it's tough. It's tough standing up here and looking out and looking at my contemporaries. And 4 years is a long time. We've accomplished a lot, and I'm very thankful. I'm thankful for the friendly faces that I see out in the crowd, to see former commissioners, former mayors out in the crowd, and I just want to say thank you for your leadership and your support throughout the years. The decision not to run again was a tough one, but it is one that I made a commitment to my wife, saying I'd do a one term, and I thought about faltering on that commitment, and I had a young son ask me why he didn't get to see me anymore, and so that made the decision rather easy, and they're the ones making noise back over there. So thank you very much. Thank you to the city of Enid. Eric, thank you for all that you've done, and it's been a pleasure.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have one more presentation. I'd like Todd Ging to come forward. And you know where to go? Todd Ging, Ward 6 Commissioner, you are and have been for 8 years, my representative. And I'm proud to say that I have admired your efforts, and I have a few things to say as well. But I want to ask Mike Goodpasture to present these placards to you. And And one of the more handsome countenances captured in this photograph is your, well,
Lucky person.
Todd, it's my pleasure to present as well this piece of walnut that notes and delivers the appreciation of a community that owes you far more than it has delivered to date. You are the last remaining commissioner who was on the council when I was hired and given the privilege of leading this community as its city manager. And during the last 7 years, you've been a source of wise counsel, of great support. You've also been a sounding board, and you've been a great friend. You have been stalwart in your commitment to the course of action that you knew was best for this community. And you, with Don Rose and Drew Ritchie, and I know Don was here. He's here. He's still here. But the leadership of three, or the Trojan horses and mighty warriors that we bantered about and had a lot of fun with during a time that took a tremendous amount of courage to fulfill. Your efforts lead by example. Your history and your legacy here is one that every child who ever plays a sport in Enid will have you to thank for the tremendous facility that you've provided. The thousands of tourists who have already started coming to Enid and have built our sales tax to double-digit rises every year have you and Drew Ritchie and Todd Ging to thank. You, Drew Ritchie, and Don Rose to thank. It is with considerable sadness that I see you leave, but I'm very pleased to say that you've been a tremendous commissioner. You remain a tremendous friend.
Eric, I have something for you, actually, if you don't mind. And for Mayor Kreiner. I went to OSU this last semester and bumped into a guy down there that was the assistant to the mayor of Ron Norick. You might know, started the whole maps down in the city, and found out that this gentleman had written this book, and I got it and said, it mirrors so much. And I imagine that every community around could say the same thing, that, what's said in here, the trials and the failures, the successes that they had probably is pretty universal, but it's definitely got some special spots in there that I think you and I and Don and John share, and got a sign for you.
That's very kind.
Now, I got one for John. I won't make him come up here if he doesn't want to. I do appreciate it, and I'd like to just thank some of the people that have helped me during this time. Of course, my job comes to mention, Northern Oklahoma College, who has never known me except for the past couple of months, has not been on the commission, and so has always had me missing an afternoon here, a day there, a week occasionally. And if it was not for their support, I couldn't have done, what I could do. And, of course, the staff, I thank Eric for making me look good, and he would just pass it on to the staff, because, every day out there in the community, it was you guys that was putting on the face to the individuals and the organizations that made us look good and made us do so well. And of course, got family, got Delisa, my wife, helped me, and she actually encouraged me to do this second term. So I was kind of happy maybe that you could only do 2 terms, because that's quite a bit. But then also my parents here, who most of you probably haven't known, but they've had to listen to me get chewed on a couple of times at Thanksgiving and other kind of events, but Bill Ging, Ruthie Ging, and then my daughter there, Taylor. And someday, some of the stuff that has my name on it around here may fall, due to age. And don't let her or her grandchildren come up here and say, "Don't tear it down because my daddy built that." When its time is come and gone, let it go. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, I have a proclamation to read, and unfortunately,
Let's go the other way.
okay,
Mistake. My mistake. Item 5.3, conduct the installation of newly elected city officials. The two this evening will be Benny Zell, Commissioner Ward 3, Rodney Tim, Commissioner Ward 4. Municipal Court Judge Linda Pickens will swear them in. Judge Pickens? Drew, we're going to miss the noise.
No, you're not.
Goodbye, guys.
I, Ben Ezel,
I, Rodney Tim,
Do solemnly swear,
do solemnly swear
you can say it together now, that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Oklahoma,
and the Constitution of the State of Oklahoma,
and that I will not knowingly receive,
and that I will not knowingly receive,
directly or indirectly,
directly or indirectly,
any money or other valuable thing
any money or other valuable things
for the performance or non-performance
for the performance or non-performance
of any act or duty
or any act or duty
pertaining to my office,
pertaining to my office,
other than the compensation allowed by law.
other than the compensation allowed by law.
I further swear that I will faithfully discharge my duties
I further swear that I will faithfully discharge my duties
as Ward 4,
is Ward 4,
and you are Ward
and as Ward 3,
3, Commissioner of the City of Enid to the best of my ability.
Commissioner of the City of Enid to the best of my ability. Thank you.
you have the opportunity for remarks, gentlemen.
Thank you to everyone who helped me through this. This is really exciting. It's especially exciting as I was a kid watching both my folks do this in the late 80s and mid 90s. And now it's thrilling to be up here and to have this opportunity to serve Enid and serve Ward 3. And thank you to my wife and daughter, both in advance, for the enormous amount of time that I won't be around for this. So thank you.
Thanks again for electing me to Ward 4, and hope I represent my district well. I look forward to working with each and every one of you, and to be honest and upfront with everyone I can work with. Thank you.
This here, we need a,
Why not?
okay? Ben?
Put the nameplates in.
Dr. Van Heuser, this is you.
He's not been legal this whole time? Oh, okay.
This is for you. All right, sir. Sit at the table and I'll.
Thank you, Judge Pickens.
Oh, this chair is much more comfortable.
Ben? Thank you. Rodney? Welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you. Item 5.4, Eric has a proclamation to read.
I do, Mr. Mayor. In keeping with his personality, our honoree is not here tonight. He is an anonymous individual in our community, but he and maintains the opportunity to remain very visible through his works. And I have a proclamation. Whereas the Enid Lego builder has become an icon in Enid through his pursuit over the last year and a half to bring the community together with hunts for over 375 magnets, keychains, and other unique items. The Enid Lego builder's efforts encourage community participation in local events and Enid businesses. The Enid Lego builder displays remarkable selflessness in remaining anonymous in his acts to better Enid. Now therefore, I, Bill Shuey, Mayor of the City of Enid, Oklahoma, do hereby proclaim May 6, 2013 as Enid Lego Builder Day. Now, the Enid Lego Builder frequently gives me gifts of his products. He'll hide a magnet taped to the back of a stop sign on 26th Street or another likeness under a road cone out on Garriott. And Mr. Enid Lego Builder, I'm going to hide this someplace where you are going to have to hunt from. But I'll tell you, I'll give you some clues.
Well said. Item 6, under hearings, item 6.1, conduct a hearing to consider changing the land use designation from medium-intensity residential designation to medium-intensity commercial designation for property described as 3 unplatted tracts of land, tracts 151, 152, and 153 in Section 18, Township 22 North, Range 6 West of the Indian Meridian, Enid, Oklahoma. Chris?
Thank you, Mayor. Right, the next slide here shows you the 3 properties. They are immediately west of where we're having our meeting right here, and these are the 3 lots. The City of Enid acquired those properties to abate blight conditions there and for the sole purpose of reselling them. And part of our process is to get them rezoned, which will be the next item. But before we can do a rezoning, we need to do a land use change. And I would direct your attention to page 27, and you will see I prepared a memorandum there to the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission that address the criteria for a comp plan change. Primarily, you want to determine that it's improving the plan, and in this case, it is consistent, and it results in an improved plan, allowing the expansion of the existing medium intensity, and I'll show you that in this slide right here. This is kind of a dark brown. Here's the medium intensity, lighter yellow, and we're going to expand that. It exists here all the way over to Jefferson. This amendment does not alter existing land use patterns as the existing property is adjacent to commercial zoning and development. B, the streets that are fronting are O&K Garriott on the north, Jefferson on the east. Therefore, the current street pattern is capable of serving a proposed commercial use. The water line system that serves the areas, we have a 10-inch main in Garriott and an 8-inch main in Jefferson. Adequate water supply is available. Sanitary sewer is available in the alley. C, there's nothing in the proposed amendment that will adversely impact the existing infrastructure. And D, the last item to review is the amendment does not adversely impact the livability, health, and safety of the surrounding neighborhood. Those are my comments. Are there any questions? This is a hearing. There may be people in the audience that wish to speak. I'll give them that opportunity.
Hearing none, thank you, Chris. Item 6.2, conduct a hearing to consider rezoning property described as 3 unplatted tracts of land, tracts 151, 152, and 153, in the northwest quarter of Section 18, Township 22 North, Range 6 West of the Indian Meridian, Enid, Oklahoma, from R-7 Residential Multifamily District to C3 General Commercial District. Chris?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. City Commissioners, right here is our property again. Oops, excuse me. It is zoned R7. This color of green here is R7. We want to change that to C3 and expand this existing district to encompass those 3 lots.
Any questions?
No adverse effect on the R7 area just to the south? I mean,
No, we have the alley there that acts as a sufficient buffer, and the setbacks will also further protect those properties.
Any other questions? Under 7.1, Community Development, consider a resolution to modify the land use map of the Enid Metropolitan Area Comprehensive Plan 2025 from medium-intensity residential designation to medium-intensity commercial designation for property described as 3 unplatted tracts of land, tracts 151, 152, and 153 in the northwest quarter of Section 18, Township 22 North, Range 6 West of the Indian Meridian, Enid, Oklahoma.
Thank you, Mayor. If you approve this resolution, it will change the land use from medium-intensity residential to medium-intensity commercial.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
Second. Motion by Mike, second by Ron. Any further discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Was that 7.1?
Yes, sir. We need to do 7.2 now, please.
Item 7.2, it all looks familiar. Consider an ordinance to rezone property described as 3 unplatted tracts of land, tracts 151, 152, and 153 in the northwest quarter of Section 18, Township 22 North, Range 6 West of the Indian Meridian, Enid, Oklahoma, from R7 Residential Multifamily District to C3 General Commercial District. Chris?
Thank you. This is the companion item to the rezoning hearing. If approved, you will adopt an ordinance that changes it from R7 to C3.
I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance to rezone the said property.
Second. Motion by Mike, second by Ron. Any further discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Under administration, item 8.1, consider a resolution amending the 2012-2013 general fund budget by appropriating additional funds in the amount of $3,012,900.31 to increase the 2012-2013 appropriated amounts for the general fund transfers and sales tax transfers department and for the purchase of park equipment. Gerald?
All right, Mayor and Commissioners, what this is an item to amend the budget.
Gerald, isn't there not a correction in the?
There is. In the background, it talks about sales tax being 11% higher in the next fiscal year, 13-14. What it means is it's 11% higher in the current fiscal year, is what it was supposed to read, which is 12-13. So this is the first of a couple items that we have on the agenda tonight, and we'll probably have a couple more in the future. Every year, these are standard budget amendments. Every year as we go through the year, there are various reasons that we may contemplate or need to raise the budget. One of those situations presents itself tonight in that we've got revenue that is higher than was originally budgeted in the general fund. And it's significantly higher because of what I just said, primarily the 11%, sales tax being 11% higher. We're projecting that to be 11% higher because we haven't got the results for May and June yet, but we have a good idea what we've estimated what we think they'll be. And so I have a slideshow here to show you what the components of that increase is. Here's the bottom line amount. The $3.3 million is the approximate amount that we're estimating that the general fund's going to be up. And it's composed of these items. We break sales tax comes to us as one lump sum amount. Well, it comes to us with sales tax and it comes with an amount for use tax. We break it down based on the 3.5%. Out of that 3.5%, 2% is really the amount that is available for the general fund. 1.5% is restricted. 1% is restricted for debt and goes to the Enid Municipal Authority. 0.5% is restricted and goes for, and is split 0.25% for school bond debt and 0.25% shared with public safety. And that's what you see up here. And there's the use tax. That's what comprises the $3.3 million. I was going to say next slide, but I guess I have the power. There we go. This is the distribution of how that sales tax goes. That whole $3.3 million is not available for us to use because of those restrictions. About 60% of it is restricted and needs to go to other places. And this breaks down how that works. The EMA 1%, about $863,000. The additional police and fire amount, we calculate, it's based on a percentage of net revenues, and we'll talk about that more as we go through the process. But that's the approximate amount that they would get. The school bond debt, we'll talk about more too. We actually budgeted more than we needed in that line item is what that's telling us. The bond payment was $1,018,000. The excess money on the 0.25%, $293,000, will be put in an account that will be divided up between 6 or 7 entities, with the lion's share going to Enid Public Schools. So they will benefit from that. We'll talk more about that as we go through. And the public safety tax. I said that was a 0.25% tax. It's broken down an eighth and an eighth for fire and police, and that was passed by the voters in 2001. So that's a separate piece of the sales tax that is dedicated and goes to them for their operations. So roughly almost $2 million is committed out of that $3.3 million. This slide shows you basically what's left. So it starts with the $3.3 million. It takes out the nearly $2 million in committed transfers that we just talked about. It takes out what we had appropriated on August the 2nd for a possible purchase of a hangar. You appropriated the money, so we have to hold that, pending that if that happens. That's $340,000. Jumbo sales tax incentive, we'll talk about a little bit more. I'm estimating that we're going to owe them $30,000 this year. We pay them quarterly. And the final thing is $215,000 for a property that we're going to purchase this month. To purchase that property, we typically purchase those properties out of EEDA. EEDA, in that budget, we have already exhausted all the funds that were budgeted and available for property purchases. Thus, we need more funds to make that purchase. So that's why that's on there. That leaves a grand total of $779,000 and some change. And then this slide is just several things that we've noted. These are some other things that we have as commitments or pending commitments. These things we have all addressed in the new budget that we'll talk about, starting with item 8.2. So with that pretty much is the end of that part of the presentation. What I've talked to you about is the available monies that can be appropriated, need to be appropriated, the budgets need to be raised, those dedicated funds need to be moved to the funds that they go to, fire, police, EMA, and EDA, and the remainder of that stays in the general fund and is available for use as you see fit. We're specifically in this item looking at the purchase of park equipment that Commissioner Van Hooser has suggested, and I think Jim McLean's going to talk about now and has a brief presentation on.
Thank you, Gerald. Mayor, Commissioner, City Manager, we were asked to put together a presentation tonight to address the needs of the park system as far as equipment is concerned. These needs that we're going to be addressing is strictly park equipment needs, has nothing to do with bleachers or anything else in the park for the next budget year. This strictly addresses the equipment in order to maintain the operation and raise the level of service, raise the level of attention in our parks and the use by the community. So let me proceed further. In the $750,000 equipment we're looking at, one of the big things that we have is the solid waste system in the parks. As you're well aware, the Renaissance project is putting a large park system into the city. This is a new park that has not been here before. The 34 neighborhood and community parks are there, but that Renaissance project has increased the size of the system tremendously. Also, through the efforts of the commission and management over the last couple of years, we have put in a trail system. And this trail system has added an additional responsibility this year especially, in the coming fiscal year, that adds another burden and another pressure on the solid waste system and on the park systems itself. So we are enlarging our park systems and we are enlarging those services that's needed to take care of those. Right here, we have noted that we're looking at a piece of equipment that goes through the parks, wherever they may be, out in the areas throughout the town, also in the downtown area and on the trail system itself. That's a one-man operation that picks up the poly carts that are noted on the screen that you see. These carts that you see here are fed through the side of the top of the cart. They do not come off until they're picked up, turned upside down, and then there's an automatic latch that releases. So what trash is usually in there, it's going to stay in there till that releases. That completes the kind of the one-man operation that's set down to the side. Of course, certainly the wheels and the tires are larger where it won't impose any kind of tracking in the park system and where they're at. I'll play you a little bit of a video here on how this operates. It's great in beaches and other areas of the systems that it has. It's used all over the country, especially in the beach areas and in parks too.
Can we get a beach?
You can get a beach. It's all about priorities, and priorities are all about dollars and cents. We struck the wording in the particular presentation on this one because, you know, a picture tells, is like 1,000 words. So the picture in itself will tell you what goes on with this piece of equipment.
And that'll operate on the trail system?
Yes, it will. Yes, it will, and not damage or hurt it. Also in the downtown area, where we have our system throughout the downtown part, where the poly carts will be going, and in the new Renaissance area also. It's a very good, clean, efficient operation, which does not create problems for our labor force. Takes about 30 minutes to learn how to use this piece of equipment. Very important piece of equipment. Another piece of equipment that will be necessary to take over this system and the trails and in the 34 parks that we have in the Renaissance program is a frail mower. The frail mower has a very clean cut. It's kind of like a reel mower. If you've ever noticed in some of the areas in the golf course, the reel mowers that they use in the greens and things like that. So it has a good, smooth, even cut and does not have those uneven cuts. It covers a lot of area in a short period of time, but still maintains an excellent cut. So one man in this particular piece of equipment here can cut, 250 acres of parks that we have, of the 300 some odd acres that we have. The remaining, that's about 70% of our parks. The next pieces that we use is hustler mowers. These hustler mowers will be the largest part of the remaining acreages available. We also have to use trucks to transport those pieces of equipment around. We don't just drive them to park or anything like that. They go up on the trailers. These are heavy pieces of equipment that are diesel powered, and they last for years. And we have a truck, need an additional new truck as part of the fleet to make sure we transport all of these. We'll be transporting 2 of those hustlers per trailer when we do transport them. The next part of the important piece of equipment is the John Deere tractor with a front end loader and with the equipment that we use as far as the box blade and some other special equipment as far as aeration type equipment and this type of thing that we use on the park system and in the athletic fields. This also denotes the areas that some of this equipment is being used in by the arrows it's pointing to various parts of town.
What kind of instances would something like that be used?
Changing of some of the field levels, making sure those are leveled and stay where they need to be all the time. The drainage ditch areas that are around these athletic areas. We'll also use, like I said, the aeration devices in the major part of the park and also the seeding of the park. One of the things that's very important to do in a park system, if you want to keep a really good park system, is overseeding. Overseeding is just a simple act that you're planting that seed during the wintertime. You maintain green grass in the wintertime as well as the summertime. So you maintain the use of the parks a lot more of the year than what you normally do as far as the looks and the aesthetics of it. So those pieces of equipment are used to do all that kind of activity and lengthens your use of the park system in itself.
And one will suffice for that?
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. What we will do, because it's just a very limited use of equipment as far as the seeding part of it, we will lease a seeder for a couple of weeks rather than have and own a seeder sit there for 11 and a half months out of the year. Whenever we can, we lease equipment, and that kind of equipment that we lease is that equipment that we don't use every day. We don't believe in buying equipment that sits on the line and not being used. It's very wasteful. The economy of it is not good at all. Along with the purchase of the mowers, we have a walker mower. A walker mower is a really fine finishing mower. That primarily be used at the Renaissance area for the frontal parking all the way to Garriott, downtown. It'll also be used in the North Government Springs area around the gardens that we have there, where we have to retrieve all that grass that we cut and not let it go into thatch on the grass. So you maintain a real good cut. I had the honor of the last 5 years before I came to the city of Enid. I managed the grounds of one of 3 cities that own professional baseball teams. And you learn a lot when you do that. We had quite a stadium and we had quite activities going on. So learned a lot about overseeding in the wintertime in the parks in Northern California, which are pretty much like what we have right here. So that experience has helped us come through and start sitting down and developing this type of a plan. Flexibility is really important in this kind of plan also, and that's where our mules come in. Those are the pieces of equipment that will actually go to the athletic fields. We'll do the dragging, we'll do the barking, and get the setups done for the athletic events that are about to occur. Also transport park employees to the areas that they need for other events too. One of the other important things you've probably not been told of or heard of, we have about 40 events every year in the city of Enid, usually on the weekends. These have nothing to do with athletics. They're 5K runs, they're all kinds of things. Well, we have to set up those events. We have to put out barricades and do lots of things. Well, Red Dirt just recently was in the town. That's a major event for the city. So there's about 40 different events that occur during the year that we're out there on weekends setting up these barricades and the routes for different things that we do too. It's another reason why we use the mules also, is give us the flexibility to move and do that. Leaf blowers, you know, those are really kind of an important thing when you go to clean up an area and keep it clean. That's just part of the equipment that keeps your park neat and nice. Field striping machine. When you go out to an athletic field, whether it's football, whether it's baseball, whether it's softball, whatever, that requires markings of the yardages or the baselines, those pieces of equipment are very important. These field stripers also serve as a painting device that we use on the screens, the backstops. One of the things you need to do is make sure all that stuff is clean, because it's very aesthetically pleasing. When you do have an out-of-town group of people coming in and you're setting in new bleachers, you've got nice bright screens to look through and this type of thing. And they talk about that, pass that wording along, and it makes your activities run and flow much smoother. And those people like to come back and spend the night in your community and spend those dollars and cents in the restaurants when they do that. Weed eaters, that's one of those things that we all use. Need some additional ones of those. And a professional edging machine in some of the larger areas. That cuts down some time also. That mounts onto a Hustler mower made by the Hustler Corporation and does a really good job.
Jim, have we had leaf blowers and weed eaters and the edging? Is that something that's been done, those things, or is that we just mow and let it go?
We do some of that in some of the few parks. And if we have a special activity, for example, in North Government Springs, when we have the Chautauqua thing that goes on every year, or the Maypo thing that goes on every year, we'll do the extra cleanup and those particular type things. We don't normally do that year-round, but if we've got them and we've got an enlarged crew that could handle the park system, that's something that we want to do. Again, it enhances the beauty of the community. It keeps it cleaner. People want to come back and all that type of stuff that goes along with doing that.
Just maintaining what we have.
It's just good maintenance is all it is. It really is. So we want to expand that too as far as the community. We're also asking for a smaller parking lot street sweeper. What that does, that keeps all your parking lots clean. It keeps your roadways to go to these facilities clean. Keeps your downtown area clean all the time. Again, that's a large park area that we're taking on. So there's a lot of needs there to make sure that these streets keep clean for athletic events, special events. Again, like I said, there was about 40 events that we had this past year just on weekends alone. And that doesn't count the events and things that we do at the athletic fields and other things. This is just other events. So we have a large area to cover in parking lots and cleaning up around these facilities. Again, it's about keeping clean. When people come into your community and they see the streets clean, that really impresses them. Another major piece of equipment that we're also looking at, and we give this a lot of thought and study too, is if you're going to have these athletic fields and you're going to have nice green parks year-round, it's going to require some water. This is an arid part of the country. We are west of I-35, and everything west of I-35, as you're well aware of, doesn't get the rainfall that goes to east of I-35. So in order to do these things, we've got to adequately water these things. Now, I like the permanent irrigation systems. In California, we had 400 acres that we had under irrigation all the time. A little different deal. But if you're going to be green, if you're going to stay green year-round, you got to get water to them. These water cannons do a really good job of providing that coverage when you don't have your permanent system in. That's what you'll need to use until you do finally get a permanent system in every park. And we do have about 3 parks that does have a permanent system into it too, but we have several that don't. This is the list of the needs for the park equipment. We have a lot of park equipment that we currently have right now that we've weaved into this. This is augmented and brings it up to where we have that level of service for the entire city and the park systems that we have, including the new Renaissance, including the trails that we're also using. Bringing these things up to where it's a joy to go to a park. It's a joy to go to an athletic event and a number of other things. So this is what we recommend as far as equipment needs for the city of Enid to move into that next dimension of parks and recreation. Any questions?
Jim, I want to thank you for a very comprehensive list. You put a lot of hours into that.
Sir.
And it's very much appreciated. You've obviously got some experience with it and put some thought in it. Jerry, I want to thank you also for finding the money. It was no small chore. You and Eric worked, the 3 of you worked pretty hard on getting this together. Is this the appropriate time to make a motion that we?
No, sir.
Nope. Okay.
Just a second. Would you go back and show us what we're voting on, please?
Well, one question for Jim, if I may. In recent years, we've been contracting out a lot of the park mowing.
Yes, we have.
Are you planning on discontinuing that practice?
We are going to limit that tremendously from what it was in the last few years, because in order to do the things we need to do, we need to get into that motion of taking care and doing the same things in all parks. So I don't see very much of the contracting in that particular area.
We have a lot of vacant lots, other city-held property, or when code has to enforce a mowing, high grass and weeds violation. That's where those resources typically came from, and that's where they'll reside.
But I know some parks have been listed too as being mowed by contract mowers.
Neighborhood parks that we
Yep.
contracted out, but as the city manager, they put it to you, we do have a lot of property out there that we haven't taken on because we tore the houses
Yep.
down. People have deeded it over to the city and take care of it. Most of that is contracted out because we can't drive to that particular address, unload, mow, load back up, mobilize, demobilize for the price that we can get it done by private contract.
On this equipment, like your parking lot sweeper and stuff, does that always just stay with the park department, or will it ever get used, some of the equipment on out of the park department?
Well, that is a special piece of equipment that's used for events, events like red dirt, barbecues, community and city-sponsored events, and those parks and athletic facilities you have in the community. That's restricted pretty well to that because it's not built to do miles and miles of streets. It's built to take care of those limited areas and do a good job.
That's why I was asking, would it wear out quicker if you did it on an everyday basis?
It would wear out, just
Okay.
that's faster.
What is the lifespan of most of this equipment?
Between 5 and 7 years on the heavier equipment. On the lighter equipment like the weed eaters and the leaf blowers, 2 or 3, a couple seasons, and that's pretty well lit for that.
Sure.
The rest of it's pretty long-term. Any further questions?
I have a question, for clarification. When you say community-sponsored events, like what kind of events are you talking about? Because Red Dirt Barbecue is an Ambucks event, is it not? It's put on by
The city helps greatly in that.
Well, the city helps with like every event. I mean, in
Thanks,
some,
but-
they help with a lot of the bigger events. I mean, in some way or another, even if it's just putting up a barricade or having police there or something. So that's what my question is, what are you talking about?
All events the city participates in as far as making sure that barricades are out for 5K runs or 10K, that type of thing, or whatever area that may be restricted for that event. Police department goes in and signs off the permit. We get it at Public Works and do the same thing, and they'll arrange for people. And usually this is overtime on the weekends. There's about 7 big events the city's pretty well involved in. The rest of them are events that schools have and other organizations have.
Any other questions? Good questions. Gerald, would you show us what we're voting on, please? The $3,012,900.
Yes, Mayor and Commissioners, what you're specifically voting on is you're raising the budget in the general fund by $3,012,960.31. It's going, and the purpose of raising that is to transfer out about $2 million of that to the funds that I'd mentioned and that are listed right here. And those amounts are summarized in the background item. Specifically, it would transfer to police $460,328.20, to fire $384,577 and change, to EMA $1.143 million, and to the Enid Economic Development Authority $245,000. That would leave approximately $779,000, of which we would pursue purchasing that parks equipment that Jim McLean just described to you. How would we would go about purchasing that? This would raise the budget to allow us to do that. Well, two ways we'd go out and get that equipment. Some of it is on state contract already, which means it's bid out, which means we can simply go out and get a purchase order. If it's over $50,000, you're going to probably see it on another agenda. You will see it on another agenda if it's over $50,000. On items that aren't on state contract, go through the bid process. We will, depending on how much it costs, we will solicit 3 quotes, or in some cases, if it's over $50,000, we'll send out sealed bids, which will come back to Linda's office to be open. And at a commission meeting, well, one of the next 3 meetings, we would bring that back to you to approve that and get the stuff purchased.
So to put a fine point on it, Gerald, a motion that would reflect this agenda item would be to transfer the funds in response to the additional sales tax revenues. And it could include the expenditure of $750,000 for the park equipment as described by Public Works Director.
That's correct.
I do have a question. The park equipment in question here, can your current staff utilize that, or is this in anticipation of the restructuring?
It would be both. The current staff could use this to also to help out the park facilities. It's better served by the restructure that we're looking at now. Absolutely.
So if that restructure doesn't go exactly like it's been presented, or for some reason, are we buying equipment that will not be utilized or utilized to its maximum efficiency?
It will be utilized, all the equipment that we're looking at the purchase will be utilized to maximum efficiency. Certainly the more people we have and the higher level of job or service that we give, we utilize that equipment much more on 100%, 85 to 100% basis.
You asked a great question, Commissioner, and you'll notice that we specifically mentioned John Deere equipment or Hustler mowers because we have a common maintenance fleet. We don't want 4 different kinds of tractors, thus 4 different kinds of maintenance schedules. We consolidate each in a not only a model series, but a type brand. And that allows us to have a common parts base and a repair capability. If, for whatever reason, we need to transfer these tools to another department, an emergency, a storm, or whatever, they blend seamlessly with our existing road maintenance fleet, for example, in the previous Parks and Stormwater Department, which will now be part of road maintenance, and the mowing requirements of that. But the specialized equipment, the flail mower, for example, and some of the other finished mowers would be designed specifically for park use and heavy pedestrian traffic. Clearly, the street sweeper is one of those items. They can be integrated into other emerging requirements. They don't just sit there and look at us when the park season's over. We can use them in the winter too.
Part of this is to put the necessary money in EEDA for the Jane's purchase.
Yes.
Do we anticipate any additional need to fund EEDA for property purchase this fiscal year?
There may be some additional need. I don't really have good insight on that.
This fiscal year, likely not.
Okay. I mean, we're coming pretty close to the end. But
Right. Yeah. Any new purchases will be captured in the new budget that you'll consider.
You had a couple of slides beyond that one.
Yes, ma'am. There's the available slide that breaks down the money and the transfers to the other funds that are required And basically, the bottom line number, right there.
That,
You-
the hangar is still, we're still awaiting
We're still waiting the appraisal.
on that.
Yeah, the hangar, I think we've issued a purchase order, and I think we've hired somebody out of Oklahoma City to start that appraisal process.
Well, you lost me when you jumped from these slides to the park.
Mayor, this amount right here, if you approve this appropriation, is going to still be in the general fund, available to do whatever you want to approve to do it with.
Flip to the next slide then. Is that something we're going to discuss later, or is that involved in what,
Yes, we will discuss.
in what we're doing tonight? You said we'd discuss it later. Was that today?
We could discuss it later tonight. It'll also be in future budget sessions. All of these items have been captured in the new budget. So
Okay.
we will discuss them and point them out, and you can choose to change them or.
When you said later, I didn't know whether you meant later this evening or during the budget process.
We can talk about it later this evening in item 8.2 if you'd like. Or we can talk about it later too.
We're going to start the budget process tonight, Mr. Mayor, to clarify.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if there's no further discussion, I'd like to make the motion that we amend the 2012-13 general fund budget by appropriating this additional funds in the amount of $3,012,900.31 to increase the 2012-13 appropriated amounts for the general fund transfers and sales tax transfers department, and to allocate $750,000 of the remaining $779,000 for the purchase of the park equipment as listed.
Second.
Motion by David, second by Tammy. Any further discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 8.2, discuss and take necessary action on the fiscal year 2013-2014 City of Enid budget. Gerald?
Yes, Mayor and Commissioners, this is where the item that we'll start talking about the budget. It's intended to be an overview. We can get deeper into it if you want to tonight, and certainly I want to try and answer some questions and kind of lay some groundwork for to ensure that you understand the components of the budget and where monies come from, where monies go. But I want to first start out by recognizing a few of my staff, and I think I'll start. Erin, would you mind standing up? Erin Crawford is the accounting manager for the City of Enid, and she's my right-hand person. Without Erin and Annette and Jennifer, who I'm going to introduce in just a minute, we would not get this process done. This is a laborious process, so thank you, Erin. Jennifer Smith, senior accountant, go ahead and stand up. She does a great job for us. She's really my budget guru. So she will also, they'll be back here to help me, if I don't have the answer, to help me find the answer so we can answer you while we're here. And Annette Radomski in the back as my other senior accountant. Okay, so with that, I've got a slideshow I'd like to go through, and I think that kind of helps describe some of this for you, and then I think we can talk about some other things and answer your questions. I wanted to start with this slide because I always like to talk about, in fact, you probably get tired of hearing me talk about limited resources, unlimited wants and needs and good ideas and all that stuff. And this is my best attempt. I've also been accused of being bland sometimes on these presentations. You know, it's too black and white, no pictures or anything. Anyway, I guess we'll move on to the substance now. Budget requirements. There are legal requirements that we have to follow. And pretty much that's what's on the screen. A budget has to be presented to you. It's the responsibility of the chief administrator, Eric, the city manager, to present this to you. And we've done that. We've given you the draft on May the 3rd, and we're going to talk about it now and have a series of meetings. I know Katie's been working with you, scheduling some of these meetings. There's a requirement for a budget hearing 15 days before the new fiscal year begins. We tentatively have that scheduled on June the 4th, which is a regular meeting. That has to be advertised 5 days before. Linda will make sure that we get that done. And the budget finally has to be approved 7 days before the new fiscal year. We're tentatively scheduled on June 18th. So really, here's the timeline as we know it right now. A couple special meetings next week, a regular meeting the following week, and a special meeting on the 23rd. So basically 4 sessions, 3 special sessions and 1 regular one to really talk about the budget. So during that time, I'm confident that we can cover pretty much really every budget, and hopefully answer all your questions. If we need more time, please let the city manager know, and we will schedule more time. The first meeting in June is the 4th, and typically, we need to have the public hearing at that meeting to meet the requirement of the hearing being 15 days before the new fiscal year. We anticipate approving it at the next meeting to be on the 18th. So that's pretty much the schedule.
18th of June.
Yes, sir. There's the topics that we're going to be talking about. It looks easy, just one little slide. There's a whole lot of stuff. Inside of, we'll talk about an overview tonight, and we'll talk about some of the revenues, and then that bottom stuff we'll get into probably in some of these other 4 sessions where we'll go into the details. The general fund has, I'd have to count them up, 18, 19 departments, something like that. There's individual funds, health, you know we're self-insured, we'll talk about that. We have a golf course, it has a separate fund. We have a park fund, the Advanced Development Authority, EPTA, and our sinking fund where we bring in ad valorem taxes to pay for judgments, and the GO bond. You'll be glad to know the GO bond we're paying off this fiscal year, so we won't talk about it for the next fiscal year. We'll also talk about the Enid Municipal Authority. Talked about that already a little bit, touched on it. Capital projects, that's an important one to know where we're going in the city and what we're doing with our infrastructure. The Enid, EECCH is an acronym you're going to see. It's Enid Event Center and Convention Hall. And we're getting used to that one ourselves. We used to call it CSCC when it was the Cherokee Strip, and then we were calling it Renaissance last year, but I think we got it down now. We're going to call it EECCH. And then we will have probably the police chief will talk to you about all of his budgets, along with the fire chief. And then ONO will talk about the airport. I'll probably talk about EEDA. We'll also have Brent Kissling here talking about ERDA and what they do to attract business, et cetera. And then Stephanie will talk about CDBG. In fact, she's on the agenda later tonight. Those are the topics. You also have these, I emailed these to you, so hopefully you can see them on your iPad because it looks really small on the screen. What this is, it's on page 4 of your budget book. It lists every single fund in the city. It shows what the beginning fund balance was. It shows what the projected or what the budgeted revenues and budgeted expenditures are. And then based on what the revenues and expenditures are, you'll see what the ending balance is. So it lists every fund that we have, that we budget, starting with the general fund and going on down, including the authorities, all the way down to Enid Public Transportation Authority, which is Fund 99. You can see the bottom line with all these funds. We've got expenses right now in this draft budget projected at not projected, but budgeted at $174 million and revenues of $172. That's a good point, a good time to let you know that when we budget, we have to have sources of money. So we're getting ready to talk about that. The budget, typically we'll have a balanced budget. If we don't have a balanced budget, we have to have a way to do that. We have to have either funds built up that weren't spent in a previous year, which would be in the fund balance, or we have to look to take out loans, get grants, other sources of funding. There we go. General fund consists of 21 departments, and we'll talk about all of them as we go through it on that. 17 of those have personnel, so you'll see personnel costs, 4 don't. The primary revenues for the general fund are sales taxes, like we just talked about in item 8.1. There are other revenues, franchise fees that we collect from the utility companies, OG&E, ONG, and the phone company. Police fines and court fees, those are typically over $1 million annually. We have permits, licenses, some interest, and grants and miscellaneous stuff. And I wanted to show you, I'm not sure, Dana, can you click on that link for me? I want to give you an update on sales tax and utility fees. And again, you might have to look at this on your iPad because it's kind of small. But what I wanted to show is for the new budget, we budget conservatively. I guess I budget conservatively. And I do that for a variety of reasons. It seems to work out well for the city. And this is a good example. With sales taxes, you can see we're projecting that we're going to end up with about $32.4 million in sales taxes. I'm only budgeting $32.5 million in the new year. Now, I just told you in the previous item that sales taxes are going to go up about 11%. They're roughly, based on our projection now, it's going to be 11%. I've got less than 0.5% there. Yes, that is very conservative. Yes, I could go back in there and bump that up a little, and yes, I still may if you guys want me to do that. But here's where it works out well for us. If we budget on that number, we got a high probability of the revenue being higher than that. That will allow us to do what we just did, where we talked about buying some park equipment or doing other things that you would like to do. If we do it differently and we're wrong, if we budget higher, say we budget 5%, 5% is probably where we'd be okay. But if it only came in at 3, then my problem would be as we're going along through the year, we're spending at a clip based on a 5% sales tax rate. So that's why I do that. So if you see that number, I guess that's why. On utilities, you can see underneath utilities, here's the summation line here. These are what make up the utilities. We have water, sewer, sanitary sewer, stormwater, trash. We break trash down to residential, commercial, and landfill. And then we have some miscellaneous stuff at the bottom, new water services, connection fees, et cetera. Turned out to be a little less conservative as we plugged in our numbers, looking at them line by line. Approximately 1% we went up on an increase in utilities. Again, that's very conservative. As you know, or may not know for the new commissioners, utility rates go up every year based on an ordinance that was passed in about 2009 to authorize automatic rate increases. Those automatic rate increases for water were based on a 5-year schedule that was set. After that, it was based on the CPI, something like the CPI Social Security Index. Never had to do that yet. I think 2016 I think will be the first time we have to do that. So water rates, they all go up 3%, I believe is the number every year. So if you look at the code, the rates in the code will not reflect the current rates because those were the rates back in 2009. We have rate sheets that we send out every year to utility customers, telling them what the rates are. We have them in the utility office, and I can give you copies if you want to know. Anyway, that's kind of the update on sales taxes and utility fees. Any questions right now about what we've talked about or the revenues?
You're budgeting $32,500,000 at 31 basis points, and it comes in at 11% or 11% increase over last year. That's $3,250,000 left over at the end of 2014.
Yes, Mayor.
Is that right?
That sounds about right. It'd be about 3 point something, maybe a little bit more than 3.2, but something like that.
What is it right now this year?
This year, it was 3.3 million, which I took out the 340, that 340,000.
Down to 779. Where you reduced it to the 779.
Yes.
We have those same reductions down to the 779
have similar,
in 2014?
Yes, Mayor. You will have similar reductions because about 60% of it is dedicated and has to go somewhere else. So if we have
why isn't that in the expense and income for 2012, 2013?
It is in the expense and income. With the item that we just passed, we put it in the income and the expense is what we did. That extra $3,012,000, we just raised the budget. We'll turn around and transfer out those monies in accordance with where they're supposed to go and how much. And the leftover amount of $779,000 we'll use to purchase approximately $750,000 in park equipment.
I understand that. Are we being honest with ourselves, doing it that way?
Well, I mean, I think so.
I like your conservatism, but I wonder if it's the real world, when we have to go in and make that adjustment.
Well, the adjustment,
like we did tonight.
The adjustment could be just as easy in the opposite direction. If we predict and spend more than we bring in, then we have to come up with the funds at the end of the year. Now, we've been through that routine here.
I understand that.
And admittedly, it is particularly on the sales tax, very, very conservative. As we go through this process, depending on what needs you guys identify that aren't in the budget that we may want to fund, we may need to revisit that and look at that. I just want to be cautious, and that's our.
It's a great
that's my
problem
opinion.
to have.
I personally like being, very conservative up front and coming out ahead at the end of the year.
Now, when we compare one year to the last, we talk about end-of-year funds. We don't talk about what we budgeted versus what we brought in. We talk about end-of-year balanced numbers, what we spent last year versus what we spent this year, not what we budgeted this year. So the analysis that you see at the end of the year is typically to normalize those overages or underages through this process. And as you can see, there is a dedicated cost. No matter what you bring in, about 65% of it's already spoken for.
Right. One of the issues we have to deal with this year, obviously, is water. And with our good partner, Koch hydrogen plant, if we're able to make that arrangement with them to get their potable water reduction down, if I'm not mistaken, wouldn't we see about a $3 million net loss in water service revenue? We're going to have to make accounting for that at some point, which I assume we will.
Yes, Commissioner, that's a very good question. That's another reason why I was pretty cautious on the utility fees. Talking to the city manager who's talked to Koch directly on this project, they are putting in the process as soon as they can, this reuse capacity. But based on what he's determined and passed on to me, I don't anticipate significant reductions in this next budget year, but by the budget year following that, I think there will be significant reductions. We bring in, out of that $11.5 million, roughly about 33% of that is due to Koch. And that comes out to about 3.5 or I think $3.8 million, something like that. So it is significant. You are right. Once we start seeing those reductions, we'll see utility water revenue go down.
That's going to be nearly a 10% hit to that number.
Yes, and that will be a challenge. However, that challenge will be offset by the fact that we will benefit in the capital improvement program by perhaps lesser projects that have to be done, or at least a longer time frame to get those done, to increase our water supply.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this point about the revenues? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the next one. This is just a pie chart. Kind of shows you, we'll start right here. This is the 1%, the $8.7 million that corresponds with this. And then we go around the circle, and you can see what, with a graphical view, where all the revenues come from in the general fund. The biggest portion is the 2% part of the sales tax. Here's the 1%. Well, this is all sales tax right here. So you can see, like 75% of the pie is all sales tax. And then those franchise fees and those other little things that I mentioned. This slide tells you on the general fund, we budgeted $43.77 million, and this is where it goes. Personnel is a big part of it, $10 million part of it. Contractual services that are broken down into things like professional services and utilities. Our maintenance and operations, which are things, tools, parts, and supplies, computer equipment, items like that. We do have about $440,000 in equipment, and we'll look at that individual budget. I think there's approximately $185,000 in vehicles as part of that. Some other items that add up to $440,000. Those bottom two items that talk about transfers and sales tax transfers, that gets back to what we talked about in item 8.1. Those items that are dedicated on the sales tax and have to flow somewhere else. There's also some departments and funds, I should say, that do not have enough revenue to operate. So therefore, funds have to be transferred to them from the general fund or from some source. And we really only have two sources, as you'll see, the general fund and the municipal authority. Those sources of those other funds that we'll see and talk about are golf, CIC, Enid Public Transportation Authority, the Enid Economic Development Authority, police and fire. Those are the Enid Municipal Authority. Those are the places those go, and I think on the next slide, I break it down even more, just based on those amounts. You can see that 14,855,000 number. That's where it goes. Advanced Development Authority, VDA. On some of this jargon, VDA means Advanced Development Authority. 35,000 goes there to support that budget. There's things that you'll see when we talk about it, scholarships, professional services, items like that. Golf, there's 220,000 going to the Meadow Lake. Community intervention, which is in the police department, that $40,000 is for juvenile fees, juvenile revenue that supports that program. EEDA, that $40,000 you see there, it's for the jumbo sales tax incentive. Again, on those sales tax incentives done through economic development plans or TIFs, the idea is that that money is essentially extra revenue, or at least a portion of it is extra revenue that is earned because either somebody like Homeland developed, or in the case of jumbos, they put in that Save-A-Lot on South Van Buren. And just to give you a little more background on that, that is, we take the sales tax amount that they generate and pay into us, we take that times the cannibalization rate, because the assumption is that 100% of it is not new revenue. The cannibalization rate is 75%, and then we pay it quarterly. That's how we come up with about $10,000 a quarter. EPTA for 120, and you can see police and fire is the bulk of that.
The golf and the VDA, are those the expenses involved and not the consulting fee and that doesn't include the employees?
Yes, golf does have employees. The $220,000 does not include, that's just the transfer to golf. Golf's budget, I think, is about, well, we can see it on one of these slides. I think it's about $600,000 or so. So that 220 is a portion that is necessary to help fund that.
Same way with the VDA?
Same way with the VDA.
Expenses?
The expenses are greater than that. There's scholarships. I think there's some housing money in there for folks that want to soundproof their windows. They live in a certain area. I think there's a few $1,000s for that. And we will actually look at the VDA budget in one of those special meetings going forward. Unless you want to look at it now, we can pull it up. And
These more or less just fill in the gap from their revenues versus what their expenses
exactly.
are.
Well said, Commissioner. They fill in the gap. They're a plug. They're necessary to either have a balanced budget or get close to a balanced budget. The actual sales tax transfers that we talked about, the 1.5% that has to be transferred out, that's what it amounts to, $13.3 million. 8.7 of it goes to EMA. That is the 1%. We'll talk about EMA, I guess, when we get to EMA, because I got more to tell you on that. Police and fire, they do have a dedicated 1/8 cent sales tax. It's a 1/4 cent split between them, 1/8 and 1/8. That has grown every year like the sales tax has. It is currently, we're budgeting at $1.162 million. That money is specifically earmarked for them. It was passed in a voter initiative back in 2001. They use and are required to use 30% of that for capital purposes, and they have to report to the Sales Tax Committee, which you guys appoint a member of.
It's a minimum of 30% on capital improvements?
Yes, Commissioner, it's a minimum. Well, it says 30%. In many years, we've spent more than that. For instance, if they have a major project going on, like renovating the police station or building a new fire station.
Can exceed, it has to be a minimum of 30%.
Yes. Now, I don't think that it reads that it has to be 30% every year. We attempt to budget it that way anyway, but from the time that the ordinance started, we've well exceeded 30% going back, and we keep records of that. I believe you guys keep records of that report to the Sales Tax Commission.
Your figures are probably more like 70% of police and 60% fire.
So we have no issue meeting that requirement. And the school bond debt that we talked about, again, that's worth talking about just a little bit more. That's a 1/4 cent sales tax. It's dedicated to pay off the school bond debt. However, The school bond debt has set payments. It was a 20-year, or it was actually a 15-year note. The sales tax far exceeds what's required to pay the debt now, but according to the issue that was passed by the people and the bond indenture paperwork, that overage we collect, and every 6 months we pay out to, I believe it's 7 select school systems. There's a percentage listed in there. Enid Public Schools gets the lion's share, something like 85%, and that goes to them. This was passed back in 2003. Back in 2003, you remember, the community was concerned about Vance Air Force Base. We're always concerned about Vance, but we were more concerned because there was a base closing round coming in '05. At that time, there was some work that needed to be done at Eisenhower School and probably some other schools that directly impact Vance children. So at that time, it was thought that we had needs in streets and we had needs in schools. So the city worked together with the school on this issue, put the issue out there, it was approved, and still going. The first 7 years of that tax, the quarter-cent was split between 1/8 for street improvement for arterial streets and 1/8 for school bond debt. They'd structured the school bond debt such that it was lower than the payments are now. And the last 8 years, all of it goes for school bond debts. We are now in the last 8 years, I think we've got about, well, it ends in 2018, so we've got about 5 years or so left on that issue. Any questions about?
It draws in more than is required to service the debt, and the excess, which is how much each year?
The excess is about $1 million.
And that goes to the schools by the tenants of the bond initiative.
Yes. Yes.
How long does this go on?
It goes on until 2018. I think the last payment is June. That schedule?
I assume that's included in the school's budget.
It is. We require them to send us a list of, well, I don't know whether they include it in the budget or if it's just extra money they allocate when they get it. I do know they look forward to it now. It's grown to such a large sum that if they don't get it after a while, they give us a call.
Right.
But we do require they send a worksheet and tell us what they're spending on because it's supposed to go for capital reasons. This is just another pie chart that I worked on to kind of give you a visual representation. This is the personnel piece, and you just go around the piece of pie. You can see personnel, contractual, police and fire transfers, and those other transfers, and then the sales tax transfers is obviously the biggest part of the pie there. Well, and I think I'll save the EMA stuff until we get down to the EMA section. So that's really the presentation that I had prepared for you tonight. What questions do you want to talk about right now, or do you want to delve into some of the general fund more deeply, or tell me what you'd like to know?
Mics are open.
Some of the new guys?
Mhm.
Maybe some of the new guys?
I think we need to give them time to read and read and read.
And then read some more.
And read some more.
Yeah.
Save some of this excitement.
In all fairness to them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the reasons why we want to get the draft out to you. And you'll be glad to know we'd never done a draft that, like you asked for, but
Thank you.
my staff, Derek Silas, got it put together, so I haven't even tried it myself. I hope it's
I did pull it up. The searchable format helps a lot.
Tell me what that means.
When the draft that was sent to us was effectively a print-off that was scanned in, and I asked that they try to generate a copy which was made straight for the computer so we can pull up a keyword or search by that keyword or, any given word, and that was sent out. And I really appreciate how quickly you folks responded to that.
Yeah, and it ought to be helpful, because if you want to type in equipment or park
That's what I was
or EMA, you can do that, and then you can see where it takes you.
Very helpful.
Young whippersnappers.
Unless there's any other question or desire to delve more into the general fund tonight, I think that's it for my presentation.
Thank you.
Item 8.3, consider an ordinance amending portions of the city's code governing hotel tax, specifically sections 2-5B-2, 2-5B-5, and 2-50, or 5B-20 of the Enid Municipal Code 2003. Andrea?
Mayor, Commissioners, and City Manager, you reviewed this ordinance back on April 2nd at the study session. We're bringing this back to you for final approval. You'll see that a few minor changes have been made. The biggest change is the removal of the exemption for permanent residents from the hotel tax. So permanent residents, even if they're there 6 months, 31 days, whatever it may be, if this ordinance is approved, will now have to pay the hotel tax to the city of Enid, which increases revenues.
Make a motion to approve the ordinance amending the city code.
Motion by Mike,
I second that.
second by Ben. Any further discussion? Is that primarily the 30 days?
It is,
Any-
yes.
You said 6 months a while ago.
Well, I was just saying that you could stay there, any amount of time now, and you would end up paying a hotel.
Any other questions or discussions?
Mr. Gilbert, what was the financial implication of this ordinance? We discussed it, but I've forgotten. Can you recall?
I think we'll pull the slides up in here in just a second. It was something like $500,000 a year. Again, we're pretty conservative when we talk about the EECCH budget. We budgeted hotel tax at $1.8 million. We're going to bring in about 1.7 something, 1.75 this year. We potentially could bring in a lot more with this exemption. And so as I go forward in these slides,
So previously, there was an exemption, and we're removing that, right? Right.
over the course of the 10-11 years, we would have, that much. Let's see. That was actually the hotel tax. Here's the exemption. $553,000 is what, if this had been in place, that we would have brought in extra this fiscal year.
Won't be a problem.
We have a couple of hotels, I don't know if I listed them on here, that there's been a lot of folks oil field workers, energy workers, folks staying 30 days or longer enjoying this exemption, which is why it's so big. Before 11, 12, it wasn't really that big. So roughly about $500,000 to $600,000 potentially.
My memory is that there's an additional exemption for, is it federal employees or something to that effect? That will remain in place?
That will, federal and state employees, yes. Traveling on, of course, federal and state business.
Yeah, Commissioner, there's the three exemptions you see on the screen there that she just followed up on. So yes, there'll still be two.
Because of the way we structured the man camps or shanty towns, as I call them, they are not impacted by this. Is that correct?
Well, that's not true. If developed, they will pay an 8% hotel motel tax too.
Well,
It'll be
I
a
thought we built a
surcharge.
separate fee into that. For that.
Well, it is a separate fee, but it's an 8% fee.
It's equal
the same
to.
day.
It's equivalent,
Same thing.
yes.
All right, thank you.
And
When would this go into effect, Gerald?
July 1st. That will give us time to notify all the hotels in town. And Ned, who I introduced earlier, handles all the hotel motel tax. She knows all these people. She'll be sending them letters, talking to them, making sure they're aware of it, and help them fill out their paperwork properly. So we believe that July 1st is plenty of time to give them notice and get into the next fiscal year.
Do we know if there are any cities nearby that have that 30-day?
Yes, there are some. I think Woodward was one of them, and I think based on what they found out from City Manager Benson, they're looking at doing the same thing. This was a deal that the city manager really pressed on, got with the city attorney. She did some significant research and found out that we could do this for a long time. We didn't think we could because these three original exemptions were in the original ordinance, but I think you determined that we could. So that's what brought us to today, and I think that probably other communities that have this will be looking to see what we've done because we're going to obviously bring in extra revenue.
Any further discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 8.4, consider an ordinance amending a section of the city's code governing offenses against decency and morality, specifically Section 5-5D-1 of the Enid Municipal Code 2003.
Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager, you first saw this ordinance in the April 2nd study session. The amendments to this ordinance remove several unused definitions, corrects grammatical errors. Further, it removes crimes not available for prosecution in our municipal court. It creates a new subsection prohibiting public urination or other act which openly outrages public decency. And once again, converts the punishment for violations from our traditional class system that's currently in place to a discretionary range of fines or sentencing.
Refresh my memory, if you would. What brought this change about?
Just the review of our ordinances. We go through them every, is it 6 years, 10 years?
Well, yes, we have to recodify the ordinances every 10 years. But my review and my previous city or assistant city attorney's review, and now Shandy, we are constantly finding things that need to be updated. For example, this ordinance contained a felony. By state law, we can't charge felonies. So when we find things like these, we bring them to you to ask you to change them.
So that they're
But I mean,
Just a
public urination's
continuing
been
review.
around a long time. I just wondered why we had overlooked it. Yes,
The ordinance that is codified now would cover public urination and likely was intended to cover public urination, but it's too broad. So it covers felonies that we can't charge. So we had to change that to make that where it is a chargeable offense in municipal court.
Was this the one that had the prostitution in it too?
Yes.
Tammy, I can't hear you.
I was asking about hookers. That's all.
She just wanted to say.
Just wanted to say hookers.
Plus, the state laws on prostitution and public urination have recently changed, and the fines for those have gone up. So while we're in there redoing the fines, we also tightened up the language for easier.
I think we're able to eliminate this, do we?
I'm sorry, what?
Never mind. I was just being facetious.
Shandy, tell me why there are so many grammatical errors in that document.
Well, I didn't draft the original document, so I'm not sure that I could speak to all of them. I think that most are just errors that Andrea and I, as English literature people, have been noticing. Mostly they're just misplaced commas or misspelled words, and I couldn't tell you why they were in the original document, but they're sure not in the new one.
Thank you.
So we have grammar
That's a good answer. Clean it up.
You had mentioned the fines. I noticed in reading through those, they all say a maximum of $500. Is that a statutory amount, or did we pick that, or, because that's not enough for some of those.
It is a statutory amount in the Oklahoma state statutes, and we are prohibited at the municipality from going over those. So yes, it's a max for us, and we can do anything up to that amount.
I make a motion we approve this ordinance change.
I would second that.
Motion by Tammy, a second by Mike. Any further discussion? Please cast your vote.
I'm sad that the
Motion carries 7-0.
isn't in there.
Item 8.5, consider an ordinance amending a portion of the city's code governing offenses involving injury to persons, specifically Section 5-5B-1 of the Enid Municipal Code 2003. Shandy?
Once again, this ordinance was reviewed in the April 2nd study session. The amendments to this ordinance removes a crime not available for prosecution, once again a felony, and converts the punishment for the violations from our traditional class system to discretionary range, and once again, corrects grammatical errors.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mike,
Second.
second by Tammy. Any further discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 8.6, consider a resolution adopting the 2013-2017 five-year consolidated plan for community development programs, inclusive of Community Development Block Grant Program 2013 Action Plan and budget for the July 2013 through June 2014 program year, and authorizing the mayor to submit the plan to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Stephanie?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners, City Manager. Last meeting we did a public hearing to get any comments to add to this document. The only comments I've received are good comments from sub-recipients that we've given funding in the past. We still do not know exactly how much we're getting, but with the numbers, I believe Linda gave you guys a copy of the staff and funding committee recommendations. On the staff recommendations, the top two lines, those numbers, they are set. And
Wait, in administration.
And housing is CDBG's #1 priority. So these are listed in what the funding committee prioritized and ranked and rated those, and staff. So the farther down you get on the list, those are less priority, although they are all wonderful projects. We just don't have enough money to fund all of them. So that's why it's in this order. So basically, you guys will need to decide how I change the last minute things before I submit this to HUD.
What does the FC stand for?
That's the funding committee recommendations. It took 10,000 from CDSA emergency repair housing, 5,000 from demolition, and 5,000 from Agnes Halfway House, and put 20,000 in Leonardo's. Those are the only differences.
If I understand correctly, the mission of the utilization of these federal funds, how would restroom rehabilitation, other than Leonardo's being a very worthy organization, how does that fall within the mission?
We qualified it under ADA. They're doing some ADA upgrades, and that's another priority for
So it's an
community
ADA.
development block grant.
So the far right-hand column is the 384, 949, 50.
Yes,
What is this? It's the Sandbox Learning Center, what is that? Is that a daycare?
it is. It's a daycare, and it's a nonprofit. It's the only, yeah, I think it's the only one now.
That's what I was gonna ask, what's the difference between that and the other 87 daycare places in town?
An
They should
individual
get-
profits from you when you pay your bill. This, not one person profits, they get a salary and that's it. And the rest of it goes back. And their rates compared to another daycare of the same quality or stars rating is a lot less. It's like $85 compared to $125. So like if you don't qualify for DHS assistance, but people struggle even if you don't qualify, it just makes it cheaper for medium income
I
people.
just wondered why that was different than any other one. Okay.
Well, one question concerning the EPTA, but what is the bus pass program? Do we give some people free bus passes?
Yes, we give elderly, disabled, or very low income people bus passes if they qualify.
They have to
go-
apply for these, I assume?
Yes, they have to produce income verification, and it's basically just to start you out. It's only like a 90-day, is it 30 or 90 days, Joan?
There's opportunity for both, depending on
The maximum is 90 days per fiscal year.
And how much do we normally spend on that a year? Is it we just whatever we allocate?
Yes, they spend it all. Yeah.
Is there not a way the EPTA can just, I don't know, do that in-house without taking it from CDBG funds? Or does the EPTA need to show that income?
Well, I don't know. I can't speak for EPTA, but I would say that they need the money as much as.
Yes, I can say they need the money, and when we talk about the budget, I think.
And those people who need to get to their meal, the elderly that have to get to their meal sites, and, the people who are looking for jobs, they can get that rolling start until they can get their first couple of paychecks to get out of the hole.
Just out of curiosity, what do we consider elderly?
Elderly, I
Commissioner.
think it's 65.
65?
Well, I got a ways to go.
You're not quite there.
That's a-
You still got a little bit.
Just want to know if Bill and I were eligible.
Along with Ron's question, bus shelters, I know that was requested, but don't they have a line item in the budget forthcoming?
I believe so. Not for bus shelters.
Are the ADA requirements
They're pretty stiff, so
so stiff that we can't provide bus shelters for,
I would
In a word,
prefer not
yes.
to.
In a word, yes, Mr. Mayor, they're.
if we continue to grow this city, we're going to have more bus shelters?
Well-
Because we're going to have to depend more and more on public transportation.
Have to have more money.
I understand that, and right now we have money.
They're expensive.
But if we put it off until we don't have money, we won't have bus shelters.
In the unlikely scenario in which the estimated allocation is actually greater, the additional funds, do those get divvied up pro rata to the organizations that are awarded, or is the additional money allocated to some of these other unawarded grants?
No.
It's pro rata?
Yes, that would require, after you guys approve this, it would require another public hearing if we were going to add another entity or organization to it. And the funding committee discussed at their meeting that they wanted to see it an equal increase or decrease across the board.
Could also be the other.
So we'll just take a percentage of the total, and each one of these receiving entities would receive a like percentage of any additional funds received?
Yes.
With the exception of the section 108.
Yes, with the exception of admin and 108, it won't go up or down either way.
And what does the admin cover?
Just my salary. No, I'm just kidding. It's training, travel, conferences, office supplies, office furniture, equipment, and my salary.
So your whole department, essentially.
Yeah, my entire department. Mhm. And I oversee all of these projects. So the more projects I have, not saying that not more the merrier. I love a lot of projects, but when you get too many, even if you just nickel and dime them and give them a small piece of the pie, I still have to do environmental reviews and assessments on each project, even if it's $1. So, and Davis-Bacon, there's a lot of federal rules that I have to go, hoops that I have to run through for each project.
I'll make a motion to approve a resolution adopting the 2013-2017 five-year consolidated plan. Basing that on, I'm assuming, the funding committee recommendations.
Second?
Motion by Mike, second by Ron. Any further discussion?
Quick question before we vote, just for a city attorney. I probably have a conflict of interest here with CDSA. I want to make sure I either abstain appropriately or hold off. What is the correct procedure for that, just to not vote to avoid any appearance of conflict?
The correct procedure would be to abstain.
Okay.
And that bylaw will be counted as a no vote.
Sure, and I understand it's voted as, it's counted as a no vote, but just,
Unless you're absent.
and unless I abstain, unless I walk
Go
out.
to the bathroom.
Do I have a conflict of interest since I'm on the board also?
You're on the board on,
CDSA?
What position do you hold?
yeah, thank you.
I am a board member.
Just a board member.
CDSA.
As a board member, Mayor, you can vote on this. You're just presenting your recommendations to the full council for consideration. There's no conflict there.
Right, I think that you have a much lesser, if any, conflict at all compared to Commissioner Uzell.
Just for the record, my mother is the executive director of CDSA, which would be the conflict.
If I can vote without any problems, I will.
I don't see any problems with you.
Okay. Good question, Ben. Please cast your vote.
And I abstain.
Motion carries 6-1. Item 8.7, consider establishing a no parking zone on the north side of Walnut Avenue from Jackson Street West to the dead end. Chris?
Good evening, Mayor, Councilman, City Manager. This is to establish a no parking zone here on the north side of Walnut. The project here was to improve the ABC Park. Part of that improvement was to put in inset parking around the park. And as you can see, with this dead end here, we need to keep this area open to allow traffic to flow in and out, since it's 90-degree, to be able to get out without causing problems. This was presented to the Planning Commission on the 15th of April, and they recommended that we present it to you for approval.
Is this, I'm assuming this is before us because it's been an issue, is that right?
It has enforced?
Before us.
You heard this in a previous study session. The problem is that there's only straight-in parking there. And in order to back out of that or into that parking, you have to keep the north side of Willow Avenue free of traffic. So that's what this does. It makes it a no parking area.
They added more parking than what was there before, or no?
They added lots of parking.
Okay.
Yeah, there really wasn't any parking there.
I was gonna say, because it's pretty horrible before.
It was a demolition derby before.
It was.
And it was all parking helter-skelter.
I guess, like I say, has it been an issue that people are parking there?
And
not
I don't
able to
believe it
get
has
out?
been yet that I've heard of, but
Well, I know, we've parked on that other, I mean, people park every square inch of any available land that doesn't have a pole or something on it, people park.
now that we have this parking scheme set up, we will have parking spaces, and it'll be a lot easier to keep the traffic flow.
And what's the plan to keep people from parking there? Just a sign?
There you go. Send the cops out. I'll make a motion that we approve this item.
Motion by Ron. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mike. Any further discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 8.8. Is that accept an offer to acquire approximately 54.95 acres north of Chestnut Avenue and east of Cleveland Street from Dr. Manuel Hensley for the Rolling Oak Stormwater Detention Facility, Project F-1307A. Chris?
Thank you. Once again, this is a regional detention facility to help slow the flow of the stormwater as it comes from the north to the south. And we have the area that we're in discussion is this is Cleveland, this is Chestnut, and this is the railroad tracks. So it encompasses that whole area. We had an alternate location picked out over here. But since that time, since we designed to that area, a developer came in and purchased that land and submitted a development plan to the MAPC to build housing in that area. As an alternate plan, we looked at across the street in that area and started discussions with the landowner. In those discussions, we were able to come up with a little bit more than what we needed in terms of actual acreage, but it did make the price a little more palatable to us, and we were able to acquire all of this area, of which we will use approximately 30 acres for stormwater detention, and the rest of it will be available for use in other areas.
What might some of those other areas?
You have commercial frontage on Chestnut. You also have expansion of any future detention requirement. You can use it for any number of issues, be it quality of life, park and recreation to business development. It was the opportunity to buy it was an all or nothing option.
How close will that come to the railroad track?
It'll be right up against the railroad track, sir.
Where is most of the water coming from that's going to be on that property?
Most of the water coming to that detention facility comes from here and a little further north. And then we will also be able to pick up a little better flow on Rolling Oaks.
The reason I ask is it just driving down the street, it appears that property is actually higher than the property across the street. But perhaps it's not. I'm just thinking, I just wonder how much land, how much dirt we're going to have to take off of there in order for it to actually hold any water for us.
Well, just as you're seeing us do it across from Park and across Purdue on the north side, we excavate that, we use that soil in our landfill for a variety of other uses. We'll take that down to the spec required to maintain that water detention.
Did you say water comes from north of Willow?
Yes, sir.
The water flow through here is northwest to southeast and includes those properties there. You know, you'll remember that we acquired a property on Willow across from the new Prairie View School, which will catch the flow at that point that would have subsequently flowed through and across Oakwood Road into the neighborhoods that join Cleveland there.
Now, and these are in Stormwater Basin B.
The Prairie View is in C, right?
No, sir.
Are they both in D?
They are both in B. Here's Cleveland and Willow. Here's Garland and Chestnut. So they're all in B.
B as in Bravo.
Bravo.
The acquisition of this property also helps us with our widening of that strip on Cleveland, does it not?
It does.
We're going to have all the access we need for that.
That's correct. We'd be the owner of it, and we would permit it as necessary to support the widening of Cleveland, which is a necessary element in this plan.
Now, obviously, we have our design for this area. That design will have to be refreshed to move it across the road.
Say that again.
It will have to be reevaluated.
We have a design, a preliminary design for the property on the west side of Cleveland. That property was purchased, therefore we don't have access to it any longer. And
In the 80 acres that was sold?
yes. Now, that, we've been unable to secure the ability to present a detention facility there, so we moved it across the road. It would require some, as Chris has said, some adjustment of the plan. But if we own all the property, nobody can keep us from putting a detention facility there, which will serve the drainage needs of all those neighborhoods on the west side of Cleveland. It's a long-standing issue for development in that area that requires water detention.
Any further questions? It is the recommendation of the staff that we accept this offer and authorize us to proceed to closing, after which we will go ahead and get work with community development for land use and rezoning if necessary.
I'll make the motion.
Wait a minute. We have two people that have signed to speak.
Mr. Bighart, you'll step forth and give us your name and address, please, sir.
Mr. Benson, Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Mike Bighart. I represent the Rolling Oaks Homeowners Association and the Quillwood Estates Homeowners Association. I'll be brief.
Thank you.
You didn't say that with much conviction. If I can pass these down, I'm not going to talk about all these. I just want to talk about the one on top. Your Honor, Mr. Mayor, I said it right. Quite simply, it's the desire of the Rolling Oaks Homeowners Association and the Quillwood Estates Homeowners Association that the commission defer this decision, that you table it until such time as it may be more appropriate. And just in the way of background, that map that's on top, and again, that's the only one I'm going to talk about. Those were all put together for a different meeting that I had, so I brought them anyway. But the map on top shows the 80 acres across the street to the west of the property we're talking about today. And that particular 80 acres at the very top, which is on the north end, is where the blue outlining is at. That represents 35 acres, which was originally designated in the comprehensive plan, and prior to the comprehensive plan, 1987, was designated in the McLaughlin Water Study as the Rolling Oaks water detention facility. And what they planned to do there, again, was to build a detention facility with some park features to it, and basically a green area in that particular area. Now, we adopted that comprehensive plan in 2003, and the comprehensive plan has some flexibility to it that allows us to make some changes to it. Those changes procedurally require certain hearings, certain meetings, those sort of things. What's happened is in this particular instance, you've got this detention facility, which in the McLaughlin study was determined to be the #1 primary detention facility in the city. You have this detention facility that's been designated in that north 35 acres. Now a developer, AC Development, has purchased that whole 80-acre tract and wants to develop that tract in a manner that's not consistent with the comprehensive plan. And again, they can do that, but it takes some steps that they've got to go through. It has to have the recommendation of the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, and ultimately it has to have the approval of this commission before they can do that. Now, the hearing, as I said, it takes the recommendation of the MAPC and ultimately the approval of this commission. The hearing on the change in the comp plan and on the developer's planned unit development, what they call PUD, is scheduled before the MAPC on June 17th, Monday, June 17th. Those proposals are going to be, they're going to draw a substantial amount of opposition, which I don't think surprises anybody based upon the number of people that were here in the fall when this first came up. Again, those may or may not survive the scrutiny of the MAPC or ultimately the scrutiny of the council. Now, I'm not here tonight to talk about the validity or whether or not it's a good or a bad project that AC Development wants to build. That's not why we're here. With respect to the reason that we're here, the acquisition of this property to the east of AC Development's planned property, I do want to talk about that. It's the position of the homeowners that it would be premature for this particular council to make a decision on the purchase of this property prior to the MAPC hearing. Basically, what we're doing is we're getting the cart ahead of the horse. If those particular provisions which are pending aren't approved, the city of Enid may never need that particular property for water detention. I know that the developer wants to develop that 80 acres. That doesn't prohibit the city from going in and acquiring that 35 acres to the north if that becomes a decision. That's a planning decision that, again, that ultimately the MAPC and the council will have to determine. But again, we're getting the cart ahead of the horse. It would be inappropriate for the city to close this particular transaction before the recommendation comes from the MAPC with regard to the changes in the comp plan and with regard to the approval of the planned unit development of the developer. Now, I can't tell you that there won't be a point in time when this purchase might be in the best interest of the city, because I don't know that here today. I can't tell you from an engineering standpoint if this is a good deal or not, because that's not my area of expertise. I don't know if it'll ever be a good deal from an engineering standpoint, but there may become a time when it might be in the city's benefit to acquire this property. It's just that right now, today is not that time. Until such time as we've got our ducks in a row with regard to the change in the comprehensive plan and the planned unit development, this particular item should be turned down by this council. Thank you, and I'll answer any questions anybody's got.
Council, I want you to know how much a pleasure it is. It's a great pleasure to see you, Mike. I enjoy working with you. We've been on.
I appreciate that.
On either or both sides of the table on several issues. I'm quite sincere when I say it's a pleasure dealing with you, Mike.
Mike, tell me about the MAPC meeting on June 17th. Is that in line whether or not we approve it tonight?
Well, you
Is that
can't.
still scheduled?
It's still scheduled. Now, what you're doing tonight has nothing
And we're
to do.
talking about the east side of Cleveland, the red
Right.
circle. Okay.
Right. They're two independent issues, okay, but they are tied together by the fact that the one independent issue that's on the east side of the road, I believe, is premature until such time as the west side of the road is resolved.
Is there anything time sensitive about the purchase we're considering?
I think that it would be prudent if we listen to not only engineering, but Chris Bauer speak to the comprehensive plan requirement for us to acquire this and why we're bringing this decision for you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. It's premature. It's anticipated that the AC development will be heard by MAPC on June 17th. That's contingent upon them submitting their quarter-mile notification list to us a week from today. And I assume that that will happen, and if that does, then we will have that on the June 17th meeting. If it doesn't, then it will move to July. As far as whether you can purchase this property before the comprehensive plan is changed is up to your discretion. It is not mandatory that you change it before you own it. I will remind you that earlier this evening, on the 3 lots immediately west of this property, we purchased those. We own those, and tonight we changed the comprehensive plan and the rezoning, which would be the same pattern we would do on this particular property. If you purchased this evening, then that would set in motion for staff to bring back to you a comprehensive plan change, as well as a rezoning from R2 to SU, which is special use. That's the same pattern that we followed in the past. I anticipate it's the same pattern we will follow in the future if that is your desire.
And Mr. Mayor, we have another speaker tonight.
I understand, if I can just address one thing that you brought up on Mr. Bauer. There is no question this commission can do what they're being asked to do. The question is it prudent to do it this time? That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
And the purchase of this land doesn't necessarily mean we have to put the detention facility there.
No, it doesn't.
So it just means we bought the land.
Chris, which side of the highway makes a better detention center?
Well, it's actually moot, Commissioner, because we don't own the land on the west side. We tried to purchase it, were denied, and it was sold to a developer. I can see no circumstance, short of a complete rejection of any of the plans that they proposed, that we would ever have a chance to buy that. The concern for the city is developing a detention facility in an area that, as Mr. Bighart correctly points out, is the highest priority in the drainage basin.
You were going to build one over there before, though, right?
But we couldn't get it bought.
If this doesn't go through, they probably wouldn't want the land no more, would they?
Well, that's not our role here, Commissioner, to predict that. Indeed, as council's pointed out, is another cart before the horse. Perhaps that's a more apt argument.
I just wonder if waiting one more week would make a lot of difference and decide what we're going to do.
Well, Commissioner, I think that Mr. Bighart and perhaps Ms. Trojan will speak to this issue. The development, whether or not this parcel on the west side of Cleveland gets developed is at hand the real issue before the residents in the surrounding neighborhood. There is a very strong source of opposition. They've been very vocal in their opposition. That decision will come to you in the future. But you won't have the chance to build a detention basin in this area, which is required unless you purchase this property.
We don't have this property under contract. There's an offer on the table. Is that correct?
Well, you have the authority to execute that contract tonight.
Okay.
That's what we're asking you to do.
But we have an offer in place and a contract in place, assuming we execute it.
That's correct.
And if we choose not to, does that offer expire, or do we have some
Like all
sole
offers.
right?
Like all
Do we
offers,
have an additional period in which to, what is the time frame in which we have to accept or reject this offer?
With that, the good doctor did not give us a timeline on that. I can't answer that, Commissioner.
Can we get it?
If we execute this contract, we can purchase it.
If we don't execute it?
Well, then I don't know.
Well, to Mr. Bighart's argument, the land on the west side is not owned by the city, nor are we having a chance to do that. If we're going to develop a detention facility, it's going to be on the east side unless something changes in that developer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And if we somehow this scenario falls through in which the land on the west side is available, and we purchase this land on the east side, we can use it for some other purpose, we can resell it, we have fairly flexible options. Are we getting a good deal on it?
Well, the 80 acres that the developer purchases went for about $2,000 per acre more than we're paying for the east side.
Okay.
And Mrs. Trojan has requested the opportunity to speak.
First of all, I want to thank you all so much for the time you take to do all these things for the city to make it a much better place for all of us. And it just, I know I left a OSU event tonight to be here because this does mean a tremendous amount, but I know you all sacrifice a lot of personal time to be here. And I just wanted to thank you first and to congratulate the new members. I also want to say that I believe this is way too early and I think that there's probably that Dr. Hensley would let you purchase this later. This is not something that has to be done tonight. It has to have a detention pond. We have lived on Rolling Oaks, and I apologize, 17 Rolling Oaks address, for 7 years, but I've driven by there for 35 years since we've lived here. And the water stands on the west side of the road. The water does not stand on the east side of the road. You will have to do a tremendous amount of work to get the water, and you might have a place for that to go, but that's very expensive too. You'll have to put a large culvert under the street to do that. It is something that you really need to get more information about before you purchase that land. The other thing I just kind of wanted, this has been really up in the air with the development over on Rolling Oaks. We have had, with Rolling Oaks Homeowners Association, the Quailwood, people in Quailwood, people in the Oaks, people who live on Chestnut, have all had several meetings, numerous meetings about this. One of these meetings, after the first MAPC meeting, where we said, yes, we know that this is going to be developed because the developer bought it. And we're supportive of that. This is infill. It's good for the city. However, the water is a tremendous issue. So we suggested that we meet with the developer and come up with some ways that this might be done because of the number of houses that they were talking about doing, because of the apartments that they wanted to put in, because of the commercial node they wanted enlarged. You know, we wanted to talk about how that could be more fitting into our neighborhood, because this is our neighborhood. So the developer met with Mayor Benson, Chris Bauer, and some members of our homeowners, and I don't know who all was there. But at that point, it was before the MAPC, and then you all agreed that they could enlarge the commercial node to more than twice what it was originally set out to be. And that was what was agreed upon in that meeting, was that the homeowners would not say anything against the enlargement of that commercial node if they would take the apartments off of the table. And I believe, Mr. Benson, Mayor Benson, is that what you heard at that meeting?
I won't deny that was stated.
And Mr. Bauer, I was not at the meeting, so that was what was stated at the meeting. And then they brought this back on. I'm sorry.
My recollection is they just simply withdrew the apartments. It wasn't conditioned upon their commercial node.
That was the understanding from the Rolling Oaks Homeowners Association, that we would not fight the enlargement of the node if they would take that off. They have now brought that back. We feel like that this is something that's totally going against, when you make an agreement with someone, you should stick with that. And so we are going to fight the apartments. And we are having a lot of people together that are doing that in the 4 different neighborhoods. So I hope that you'll take into consideration that there are a lot of citizens out there that do not want this development on the west side of the road the way it is. We really would like to see the detention pond on the west side of the road, and I think that's a possibility. You know, if you have to purchase the place across the street, you could purchase this too. And the way Rolling Oaks actually goes out onto the railroad track is extremely dangerous. And you need to have the water taken away from there. So please consider putting this decision off to purchase that land. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time.
Sharon, I salute your contribution to our downtown plan. I know you were an early steering committee member. It's a wonderful contributor to the downtown strategy. Well done.
Did you say the Rolling Oaks addition was in favor of the detention pond on the west side of Cleveland?
Yes, sir, we are.
Because there is a problem if we don't buy the property and the development is approved, then it almost has to go on the west side, if you cannot buy it from Dr. Hensley. That's part of the mix.
Yes, Mayor, as I said, the detention pond's been we've known about that for years.
That's correct.
And that's been, that's been fine with us. That's been fine. We have no problems with that.
There's an assumption there that we're able to get that land, approximately 35 acres on the west side. Is that's?
No, that assumption has never been presented by the developer. The developer bought this land, intends to develop it, as he is clearly entitled to do so. And our approach in acquiring this land is to ensure that we have the adequate detention to control the drainage. Now, Sharon's right, the water does currently stand on the west side of the road, because that's we intend to develop the drainage and all the facilities that will carry that water from the west side into the drainage facility on the east side.
Is there a possibility of doing a 35-acre swap? And
no, we've been down that road repeatedly with the developer. He will tell you that without that 80 acres, his plan doesn't work financially. The issue is, this is the first opening argument in opposition to the development. We understand that. It's a very personal issue to the residents over there, and it revolves around the apartments seem to be the central part of that. Now, in fairness, there has been a great exchange of information between the interested parties, and I think they're all trying to do the right thing to serve the community. And it will have to play out in stages. From a staff standpoint, we must provide for a detention facility to serve the northwest portion of Ward 6 and Ward 5. We cannot do that with our previous plans. We attempted to buy it, we're rejected. Now we found the opportunity to buy cheaper land across the road, and we'll offset this drainage loss on the west side of Cleveland.
And we're widening that.
And as I told the residents, it is critical that we bring forth an expansion of Cleveland to 4 lanes with suitable intersections, crossings at the railroad with lights that support that. You will see that in our coming budgets. And they can't be put off 2 years down the road. They have to be commensurate with the development in that neighborhood.
I'm curious, though, if all of this development's going to take place on this property, is the developer going to retain the runoff from all of this development on that property as well?
Yes, there is on-site detention.
Because if you do a lot of paving there, obviously you're going to have a lot of runoff.
It's several acres, and it's a feature in his plan.
It's on the north, it's on the south side, up by the commercial node.
Okay. Well, I mean, I didn't see any reason why we should provide him with a place to drain his lot onto our
No,
property.
his plan has
He meets all of his
on-site
considerations for on-site.
Okay,
Tell me what,
This is not a detention pond for this development.
right,
This is a regional drainage basin.
okay.
And this issue has been taken up, embraced, and in part has been addressed by previous commissions, but not to the degree that staff has proposed. Now we're bringing the opportunity to you to make a significant contribution, and in so doing, you clear one of the hurdles for an infill requirement that's very necessary for the city. You will hear the proposals in coming weeks, and I guarantee you the folks in that neighborhood are going to be here in force. The question tonight is whether or not we can provide a regional drainage basin that serves not only their neighborhoods, but the ones to the north and the northwest.
Well, and actually, the property we're talking about acquiring would really be a nice piece of park property, too.
Well, as you'll recall, that was one of the 2 locations. When we first tried to buy both of these parcels of land, they were going to be the early park proposal. When the west side got sold and we couldn't buy it, we were rejected in our offer. Then the east side was not of the size necessary to fulfill a community park.
Nice size area.
It is indeed. With the additional 25 acres that we're going to purchase, it's tailor-made for a Ward 5, Ward 6 community park that doesn't currently exist.
May I ask another question, please? That relates to this? So you're talking about how much less expensive it is to purchase the land on the east side of the road. Have you considered what the cost is to move all that dirt, to put the culvert in? Isn't that going to make it about the same cost as the others buying the land on the other side?
You bring a good question, Sharon. The issue is, can we do one or can we do the other? The answer is we can only do one of the two. So the cost of what it's going to take is not as relevant as we'd like it to be, because we can't do it on the west side. We don't own the property. We've approached the developer for him to cede us some of that property to do the same thing. We were rejected on that score too. To provide you with the draining that your neighborhood has clearly enunciated to us on frequent occasions. This is a response to the drainage needs of the northwest sector of the city. It is not and should not be seen as a favor to the developer.
That detention pond is a requirement from whom?
From our drainage study. One that's been on the books. Robert, how long have we been trying to build a drainage facility in these two drainage basins?
We have one now.
It was adopted in 1997. Commission adopted the plan. We have identified 12 stormwater detention facilities, and we have 6 in operation, and we're trying to expand that every year.
We have one in that area across from Prairie View.
Well, we own that land. That will be developed.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, to answer your question, the McLaughlin report was presented in 87. It was actually adopted in 97 with the fees provided for those improvements. So since 97, making improvements to the master plan and adding to it. There was 11 original detention facilities identified in that plan. This was one of them. Actually, since we've increased, we've added to that plan, added the Basin C, which is North Boggy Creek. There's actually one identified in that one, which is being improved in Crosland Park. But of the original 11, there are 6 that have been in operation right now. And each year we try to acquire property one year, and then next year try to make an improvement. So we're moving that process along. This year we were scheduled to do the acquisition for the Rolling Oaks Detention Facility. We're not able to acquire it on the west side. So we brought for you this option to acquire it on the east side, which would certainly provide for the stormwater detention as anticipated by the McLaughlin report.
Now, the city's offer on that west side, was it rejected because we're just too low? They didn't want to split it up? What do we know?
Well, they got a better offer from Mr. Anderson, the developer. In fact, my first exchange with them was they weren't interested in selling it.
Well, I look at this as a completely separate issue from the PUD issue. And for me, it's just a straight-up business decision. I mean, it's a piece of land that we've got a reasonable price for. I look at the appraisal today as well as the numbers for the Anderson purchase, and it's right in the middle range. And, you know, I am against very much the city being in the real estate business. But in this particular case, because of the widening of the street as well as the easements and things that we need, I'm ready to call the question and make a motion that we approve this now. I don't see any reason to wait.
Make a motion.
All right, I make a motion that we accept the offer to acquire the 54.95 acres of Chestnut east of Cleveland Street from Dr. Hensley, project F-13007A.
Second.
Motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 6-1.
And I do look forward to the discussion in regards to the PUD. That is not a done issue by any means.
Item 9, consent.
I have one question in the consent items, before we maybe go, or we'll just pull it out. If I could pull out 9.2 and make a motion to approve the rest of them.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the consent items with the exception of 9.2.
Second.
I'll second that.
Second by David. Any further discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0.
On item 9.2, I just had one quick question. In that wordage, it says, this additional right-of-way is given at no cost to the city of Enid as a condition of site plan approval. Can you tell me what that condition entails?
Hey, Dale, it's just getting exciting now, but
It's my understanding, sir, that the condition was they would provide us with that easement to give us the right-of-way, and they would be able to increase their lot size. I don't have all the exact data. If you would like, I can find that for
You're
you.
going to be able to increase their lot size?
I believe that's what was the condition. I will find out the answer for you.
So we're accepting some of their land for use of a right-of-way, but their lot size is going to increase as a result?
But their parking lot. You can see that what they've got here is they've given us this.
This isn't residential, okay.
Up on Purdue, and what they wanted to do is increase a little bit of this.
they can't put down that parking lot unless they give us an easement to maintain utilities along that boundary.
Okay.
Don't let the wording that our poor wording, give that a color that it doesn't deserve.
Okay, well, I just was wondering what that meant. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Ron. Any further discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 10, reset. We will now recess to convene as the Enid Municipal Authority. Item 11, trustees of the Enid Municipal Authority rescheduled regular meeting are all in attendance. Item 12, Enid Municipal Authority rescheduled regular meeting. Item 12.1, discuss and take necessary action on the fiscal year 2013-2014 Enid Municipal Authority Financial Plan. Gerald?
Dana, can you pull up those slides from earlier, please? Now we're going to talk about the Enid Municipal Authority a little more in detail.
Have fun yet?
Take an intermission.
No, usually it's cold, actually.
Stuff in it. While he's pulling that up, I will tell you that
I'm even getting
you may notice some subtle language differences here. When I talk about EMA and EEDA, I refer to that budget as a fiscal financial plan, and the only reason I do that is because the authorities aren't really covered under the state budget law. So I just don't refer to them as budgets, I refer to them as financial plans. Also, wanted to talk a little bit about Enid Municipal Authority and the purpose of Enid Municipal Authority. One of the main roles of the authority is to align the utility departments under it, but probably the reason it was created was to allow the city to borrow for periods of longer than a year. So just give you that background. Okay. EMA has 6 departments. It's composed of 6 departments: utility services, solid waste services, water distribution, and water production.
It's the utilities side of the house, right, Gerald?
Exactly. 4 departments with personnel, 2 without. So when you look at the primary revenue sources, they are utilities, utility fees, which we saw just a while ago.
What are the 2 that don't have any personnel?
The capital replacement department, and the other one is 315, which is a roll-up of all of them. So technically, it does have some personnel in it, but because it rolls up the personnel from the other 4 departments. But that's what I call the 2 without personnel.
Is that for allocation purposes? To keep?
Well, it's basically for a roll-up. 315 rolls up the 4 departments with people. It also has the debt payments in it. It has the transfers to other funds in it. So it's kind of the summary department, if you will.
It's really hot in here.
We can look at those utility fees again if you want to. We looked at them earlier. You remember there was about a 1% increase we were budgeting. Do you want to look at those fees again? Okay. That won't hurt my feelings either.
Thank you.
Do you really want to present them again?
Can we make it
Not really.
clear in here at all?
No, I've got it set aside.
I think we've hit it hard. You know what the utility breakdown is, if you want to look at that pie chart. There's where it goes. 4.3 million in personnel and on down. Again, transfers primarily for capital improvements to capital improvement funds that we'll talk about more in the coming weeks is where that goes, and 12.8 million for debt service. There's just a further breakdown of that 26 million where it goes. The general fund is one example. The general fund we transfer money to because there's not enough sales tax to support all of the expenditures in the general fund. Street and alley for further development. All those CIF is the capital improvement fund. SIF is the street improvement fund. SSCIF is the sanitary sewer capital improvement fund. Stormwater, water CIF is water capital improvement fund. So that jargon I will try to spell out or explain to you what it is as we go forward. And then the airport will need to, in this budget, transfer about 1.4 million over to support the extension of the runway that sitting commissioners know about and the new ones may know about. So it adds up to about $26.5 million. There's an expenditure breakdown. You've got this file so you can look at it anytime you want. There's a debt schedule breakdown. There's about 11 debt issues. The good news here is that really big issue, this one right here, $5 million. We've got to pay on that for the next 3 years. But in the 16-17 budget year, we'll have that money freed up for other infrastructure needs. So that's the really good news as you look at that debt schedule.
What is that amount?
It is the amount is for the next year is $5.5 million, and it's roughly about $5.5 million a year until the very last year, which is in 16-17, where it's $4.9 million. But the good news on that is that last year there's enough reserves already at the bank. Central National is the trustee to pay that last year. I've already talked to them. They recognize and understand that we won't need to transfer, or they won't be making debt transfer payments that last year. We'll still transfer the 1% there for capital, but that whole 1% will sit there for capital improvements instead of the majority of it being used for debt service.
This is the really, really expensive water loan.
Yes, very expensive.
Could not be renegotiated.
Right. No, it could not. Originated in 1987. I think if you look at all the payouts that we make, it'll be about a $27 million payout for about a $3.2 million principal amount. So, but you got to remember in the 80s, the interest rates were high, and we're paying about an average 7-point-something% interest rate on this.
Get that next slide, Joe.
Get us off of there.
And actually, that's it for EMA, because this will take us into the EDA stuff. Any other questions about EMA? We have a day dedicated to delve into those departments and talk more about where the money goes and the capital improvements resulting from.
And for the new commissioners, we would offer to do background updates and other tutorials as you desire. So all you got to do is tell us what you want to learn, and we'll make that available to you or any other commissioner. Your contemporaries are a little bit more vested in the process.
Absolutely. If there's no other questions, then that's it for the EMA presentation. And as you know, there's no vote on this tonight.
Are we at 12.2? Approval of claims in the amount of $239,978.02.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mike.
Second.
Second by Ron. Further discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. We will now adjourn to convene as the Enid Economic Development Authority, which is item 13. Under item 14, the trustees of the Enid Economic Development Authority rescheduled regular meeting are all in attendance. Item 15, the Enid Economic Development Authority rescheduled regular meeting. Item 15.1, consider a resolution increasing the 2012-2013 fiscal financial plan for the Enid Economic Development Authority in the amount of $280,345. Cheryl?
Yes, what this item does is this is a follow-up on item 8.1. We have to increase the budget in the Enid economic, or the fiscal financial plan and the EEDA to cover three items that were discussed in the background of item 8.1. That is the $250,000 for the James property that we think we're going to close on this month. $215,000 for that, the $30,000 for the sales tax, or the jumbo sales tax incentive, and then the $35,345 for the Roosevelt Park Apartments TIF money. That money is already in EEDA. We just need to raise the budget to cover the payout.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Ron, second by Tammy. Any further discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 15.2, discuss and take necessary action on the fiscal year 2013-2014 Enid Economic Development Authority Financial Plan. Gerald?
All right, we'll make this quick. EEDA is one department. What comes into EEDA is EEDA gets no money unless we transfer money into it or there's specific revenues. In this case, there happen to be some TIF revenues, the Advanced Foods TIF, Roosevelt Parks TIF, and potentially the Oakwood Mall TIF when that gets going. There will be some TIF bond proceeds from the North Star agribusiness TIF as well. So we'll talk about that in detail on the day we talk about EEDA. Also, the Homeland sale that you guys have talked about, supposed to close in June. I'm anticipating that those monies will get either in June or I'm expecting shortly thereafter. I'm budgeting for that in EEDA. There's a revenue breakdown you can look at, where it goes, a little bit simpler there, 3 places. And there's actually where those transfers break down. Most of it's the canola plant. You'll see the amount for the Enid Municipal Authority there. That is to transfer the remainder of what's left of the Homeland sale that we don't use in the budget back to EMA because that's where the money originally came from.
What are you asking us to do?
Nothing. This is just for discussion and for your information. We will talk more about EEDA at one of the future meetings. So there's no action required.
Any other questions? Thank you, Gerald. Item 15.3, approval of claims in the amount of $18,658.
A motion to approve those claims?
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Ron. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. We'll now adjourn to reconvene as the Enid City Commission. Under public discussion, item 17, there were none signed up. Is that grammatically correct, Andrea? There were none? Okay.
Gilbert didn't sign up.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I will make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Tammy. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. We are adjourned.
Jeez.